Okay, I would like to call the May 1st, 2023 City Council meeting to order at 7:01. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. We have, that's not online at this time. He is excused. Megan, Andrew, Tyler, Kim, and Joe are present. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
Favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. I'm supposed to talk into that. Okay, moving on. Okay, we are now at public comment. This is the place on the agenda where the public is invited to speak to council regarding any matter not on the agenda and not scheduled for a public hearing. Members of the public addressing council are requested to give their name and city of residence. Speakers are to limit their testimony to 5 minutes, or we are limited to 30 minutes total for all public comments. Anybody sign up, Susan? Nobody? Nobody online? Okay, thank you. Moving on to consent agenda. We have on our consent agenda today, April 17, 2023 City Council meeting minutes, a contract approval for contract 2023-10, a Havlik and Northwest Scappoose overlays and ADA ramps, and contract approval contract 2022-09, task order TO-5- basalt production well design. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion made by Councilor Holmes. Any seconds?
Second.
Second by Councilor Miller. Any discussion? All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have a couple proclamations today. I'd like to start. We're here today visited by the VFW. We've got the VFW Buddy Poppies proclamation. So I'll read the proclamation. And then if you want to say anything, happy to. Okay. All right, here we go. Whereas the annual distribution of the Buddy Poppies by the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States has officially been recognized and endorsed by governmental leaders since 1922. And whereas VFW Buddy Poppies are assembled and by disabled veterans, and the proceeds of this worthy fundraising campaign are used exclusively for the benefit of disabled and needy veterans and the widows and orphans of deceased veterans. And whereas the basic purpose of the annual distribution of Buddy Poppies by the Veterans of Foreign Wars is eloquently reflected into the desire to honor the dead by helping the living. And whereas leadership within the city of Scappoose is built upon the philosophy that daily decisions and actions must incorporate individual accountability and ethical character qualities such as honesty, dedication, personal integrity, courage, compassion, love, and respect for all people. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Joseph A. Backus, Mayor of the City of Scappoose, do hereby urge the citizens of this community to recognize the merits of this cause by contributing generously to its support through your donations for Buddy Poppies on May 19th and May 20th, 2023, for the distribution of these symbols of appreciation for the sacrifices of our honored dead. Further, I urge all patriotic citizens to wear a Buddy Poppy as mute evidence of our gratitude to the men and women of this country who have risked their lives in defense of freedoms which we continue to enjoy as American citizens. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Scappoose to be affixed. done at the City Hall in the city of Scappoose, Oregon on this first day of May 2023. Oh, David, can I give you this? I've got a copy for you here. Autograph on it, should be worth something. Thank you. Okay, next, we have National Law Enforcement Week proclamation. To recognize National Police Week 2023 and to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy. Whereas there are approximately 738,767 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Scappoose Police Department, whereas some 55,054 assaults against law enforcement officers are reported each year, resulting in approximately 16,260 plus injuries, whereas the first recorded death in 1786, over 26,258 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty, including 191 officers in Oregon. Whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Office's Memorial in Washington, D.C. Whereas new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring. This includes 224 officers killed in 2022 and additional 332 officers who died in previous years. Whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all the fallen officers and their family. Therefore, be it resolved, the City of Scappoose formally designates May 12th through the 16th, 2023 as Police Week in Scappoose and publicly salutes the service of law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Scappoose to be affixed, done at the City Hall in City of Scappoose, Oregon on this first day of May 2023. Okay. One more. Okay, we have now National Small Business Month. Whereas the month of May 2023 has been designated as National Small Business Month in recognition of the critical contributions of America's entrepreneurs and small business owners, and whereas nationally more than half of Americans either own or work for a small business, and they create 2 out of every 3 new jobs in the United States each year. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and we must work to ensure that our city recovers and rebuilds not only from the top down, but also from the bottom up and the middle out. And whereas locally in Scappoose, Oregon, 95% of our businesses are small businesses with 50 or fewer employees, the City of Scappoose offers assistance by waiving the city business license fees and also recognizes that small business assistance is a partnership with our affiliated organizations. And whereas the City of Scappoose takes this opportunity to highlight the impacts of outstanding entrepreneurs and small business owners and recognizes that Small Business Month is a time for us to celebrate their successes of small business and to thank our small business owners for their contributions to our city, our economy, and our nation. Now, therefore, I, Joseph A. Backus, Mayor of Scappoose, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Small Business Month in the City of Scappoose and urge all residents of Scappoose to participate in this observance. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the City of Scappoose to be affixed this first day of May 2023. Okay. On to old business. Ordinance 914, an ordinance amending the Scappoose Municipal Code Title 8, Chapter 8.08 for fire prevention regulations. This is our second reading, and we've already had a motion and a second to accept the ordinance as written. Any discussion? Okay, those all in favor, or we've already got first and second. All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Number 4, on to ordinance 913, an ordinance related to the cable television franchise agreement and repealing ordinance number 823. This too is on second reading. Any updates, City Manager Raines?
No more requested.
We have had a motion to accept the ordinance as written and a second. So any discussion? All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now on to the 300 pages of our program. On to new business. Ordinance number 915, an ordinance updating the City of Scappoose Stormwater Master Plan. This is a public hearing and we are on first reading. Public Works Director Dave Sucal.
Mayor and Council, good evening. As you mentioned, this is the first reading of the proposed ordinance 915. This ordinance would adopt the Stormwater Master Plan dated 2023. This information was presented to you a couple of months ago in a work session. None of that information has changed since then. We're just in final draft. We do want to make note financially that none of the rates that are suggested in this document are before you for adoption of in place tonight. We're going to come before you in future. We're going to discuss what those rates will look like, and then we'll have them on the fee resolution later this year. Other than that, we have the engineering team that drafted the document on the line and city engineer with us tonight for questions.
I got one. Can you in layman's term kind of explain a UIC to me? Thought I'd come up with something.
I won't give you the textbook. I'll have to ask you that, but underground injection control, and so the blades. Anytime you are discharging a stormwater facility that is made and into that facility, essentially considered to be kitchen well, just regulated. They need to be registered. Is that
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Very good report, very in-depth, very thorough. Anybody have any other questions before I ask for highlights? I mean, is there anything you'd like to express or show or?
Why is this plan the best plan for us?
Yeah,
Well, it's one of many best plans. All of our utilities have good master plans. This was slated to only take about 2 years, but COVID came along right as we kicked it off. So that's why it took us 3 years to get to this level. I don't think there was any big surprises, honestly, for us in it. You know, we know that geographically the city has different types of drainage due to conveyance constrictions or whatever the case may be. I don't think there was any surprises. It was a lot of work. There was a lot more sub basins identified within the city that I had anticipated, but
does this take into consideration all, future growth? I mean, based on where you think we might grow, or when we grow, we will then address it at that time and develop.
within the urban growth boundary? It anticipates the growth there, and this master plan update actually did analysis of individual drainage basins, which was not done on the last one. So it's much more comprehensive and useful in terms of solid recommendations and costs.
I saw a little bit on it, but does it take in consideration, private owners' drainage ditches and how we are going to handle those if they fail to operate or fail to address them?
Well, in so much that they're privately maintained facilities that are also, conveying like public stormwater. Yeah, we didn't, it considers all of those areas.
I got one. Don't know.
Yes.
Angela and Thomas, is there anything you want to elaborate on this plan, how it compared to others, or anything you want to point out to council? You muted.
You're muted.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
There, okay. I think as Dave pointed out, there was a fair bit of effort done at the front end to subdivide drainage areas within the city and recognize where those different drainage areas discharge to. We approached this master plan because the city's public conveyance system is a little piecemeal through the city. There are a number of, as you mentioned earlier, those UICs, which receive and infiltrate runoff. And so the city's public conveyance system is split out into kind of smaller piped and ditched conveyances throughout. So we approached the analysis of the conveyance system in a targeted modeling capacity. So that allowed us to do a little more in-depth investigation into the certain portions of the conveyance system where the city had reported challenges or issues in the past. And so that allowed us to more efficiently approach the master plan and the development of capital projects to address the areas that were of most concern.
Thank you. So most of this funded through our general fund, or not general fund, but are there grants and opportunities to get some of this done with state monies?
I'm not aware of grants, but loans are available.
There are some grants, but they don't amount to much. I think there's a point source grant from the DQ. It's called the 319 grant. We worked with that for some engineering work several years ago. I don't know if it covers infrastructure though. I haven't looked at it,
That was for design standards and it was about
Yeah.
12,000.
right? But I think there's a new one that just came out. I don't know what rails it has on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but they're fairly minimal. The grants out there that we are aware of, there's not a lot.
So this comes on, our citizens are paying for this
Primarily.
primarily.
I mean, a lot of these will be capacity improving projects, so still be SDC eligible.
So this allows us to have SDCs that are a better approximation of the actual impact on the system. So we need this level if we want to better capture what new development is actually costing the existing city, we need this level of detail in order to get those numbers up. I would anticipate them going up based on what I know, but it's possible they could. Possible, but very unlikely they could go down.
Another factor is that this is similar to parks. You have the maintenance component and you have the capital side. So you've got to find that balance of both. And with our current rate structures, we're barely keeping up with the maintenance. We actually need to expand to even meet the maintenance standards. So without some projections to raise money and revenue future, then we're never going to accomplish these. And that was a lot of the work of this was CIP and figuring out funding strategies, which we talked about a couple of months ago. We'll be talking about to you in greater depth here in a couple of weeks.
So at that time, we'll talk more basic versus recommended versus aspirational levels.
And I'll add to that, since you mentioned UICs, that one of the baseline costs moving forward is to retrofit all of our UICs to meet DEQ standards. Actually, none of them do now. So, some of that is going to be, a lot of that funding needs to be allocated to that. We have a schedule to do that work under our new permit. So that's, I think under the basic level, it covers that and minimum, amount of maintenance system wide on that.
Anybody else? Okay, so being that this is a first reading, this is a public hearing. So I'll open up to the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to comment on ordinance 915, an ordinance updating the city of Scappoose stormwater master plan? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and move it forward to council to discuss. Okay,
I'll just add, no, I appreciated the first presentation of the report. I think this is really thorough, and I would say at the League of Oregon City Spring Conference last week, there were a couple of communities that were talking particularly about the importance of stormwater management and how it really can be devastating to residents and businesses when it's not managed properly. And so I think going with, the recommended level of service rather than some basics, I think that's really great forward thinking for the community. So thank you.
yeah, thank you very much. So now we're looking for a motion to accept the stormwater master plan as written.
I'll make a motion to adopt the stormwater master plan as written.
Counselor Holmes makes a motion to adopt the stormwater master plan as written. Any seconds?
Second.
Second by Counselor Miller. Okay, we will leave it there. Ordinance number 915, an ordinance updating the city of Scappoose stormwater master plan. We will send it to second reading at our next meeting. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Meeting. Thanks very much. 300 pages together, get through it quick. Then we got number 6, Economic Development Committee timeline recommendation for Council Goal 1.1, identifying a process for community branding, prepare a scope of work and request for proposals, RFP. Associate Planner NJ Johnson.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So I am presenting to you today the recent Economic Development Committee goal recommendation regarding Goal 1, Objective 1, which currently states and instructs staff to identify a process for community branding, prepare a scope of work, and request for proposals. The EDC would like to spend more time gathering some information on it, and therefore they're recommending that the city pause the branding RFP process until further notice. I want to state, just as context to this, that this council goal is currently scoped for fiscal year 23 to the end of fiscal 24-25. So, in terms of the timeline, we wouldn't normally look to be pausing something like this, but
Thank you. Any comments? Go ahead. Economic Development Committee member.
You introduce
Yeah,
yourself.
sorry.
My name is David Sedaris, and I was recently seated on the committee. Been to 3, and during 2 of those, one of our members actually has a background into branding and marketing companies. He has been donating his time and services, trying to educate us, educate anyone who comes to our meetings about what should be looked at, sort of the preliminary steps that need to happen. Branding is complicated for Scappoose. It's not a slam dunk like Leavenworth or other places. So we need to kind of, I don't know, it is our opinion that we can do some of the background work, the heavy lifting, before a consultant is hired to lower expense and to speed the process along. I don't think it's going to be any faster or cheaper excluding us. And I think we are wanting to help. We have an expert involved already free of charge, who's not looking for the business. He actually is retired, so there's no conflict of interest. And I think it would be ill-advised to proceed under with those circumstances in place.
Thank you. I was at the meeting, so if I say something that wasn't quite right or I listened wrong, let me know. But for me, I don't even know what a branding exercise or scope is. So when we were doing this, I wanted to kind of get information on the scope of an RP or the scope of this branding exercise. And I still want to do that. I mean, I do want EDC as a major part of this program, whether it's through consultants or not. But I think the idea is that we need to identify what we're looking at here to then determine, you know, the next steps. Is this something before we send it to an RFP, find out the scope of work, kind of write up an RFP and look what we're asking for, and then decide, is that something we're going to send out in its whole entirety, or are there parts of it that we can do? And if we do send it out, I still would think UWAs would be kind of the point, you know, the EDC would be a very important integral part of their program, you know, of coming through you to determine our branding.
So,
Yes.
just for instance, the gentleman, Paul, on the committee who has the experience, he probably could look through his files or past emails, blank out some names and come up with, I don't know, half a dozen RFPs that have already been written and sent. So that we're not recreating the wheel. If you wanted to know what it looked like for that specific thing, so you could get examples side by side. And I'm speaking out of turn because it's not my information to give away, and he might not want to. But we haven't even crossed that bridge yet, and I think that there are. Yeah, I think that it is a resource that should be utilized.
Councilor Holmes.
Yeah, so I guess from staff, where are you guys at in terms of developing an RFP? Is it already framed out and ready?
No, we're not really close to issuing right now, frankly. We're trying to, we're trying to get as much feedback as possible from mainly the Economic Development Committee, because if we do go a consultant route, they'll sort of be the main stakeholder group that we look to for our branding efforts. So right now we're trying to build up an idea of what a scope of work could look like, because a lot of branding work, as Paul's mentioned a lot before, is for private sector corporate branding, whereas community branding, takes a little different look at things.
Yeah, so I guess I would agree, if we can get kind of a clear picture of what the steps are or what needs to be accomplished, what we would be hiring a consultant to do, right? Maybe sharing that back with the EDC and saying, which pieces of this do you guys want to work on and what is your timeline for achieving that? That maybe gives you guys a sense of when you would go to RFP and what you would be asking for,
right,
the balance of the work.
Thank you. Peter?
So generally, it would start with a survey of assets, of community assets or assets that could be used to attract people from out of the area. If there's enough budget for it, then it's done. They do polling. So they would do polling on Columbia County. They would do polling on Scappoose. The Destination Management Organization for Clackamas County is branded as Oregon's Mount Hood territory. And that's because Clackamas polled so poorly, and Mount Hood polled very highly, and Mount Hood is in Clackamas County Timberline Lodges. So all their branding was based on active outdoor recreation and agritourism, because that's what that county offered. Just like Newburgh or Yamhill County would be, their assets are wine and vineyards. And so that's what their branding would look like. And then there's usually some sort of community consensus about who you want to attract. So it's probably going to be active outdoor recreation, because both the Gorge and Mount Hood are oversubscribed, particularly since the forest fires outside of Estacada. And what Paul's mentioned in the past was, which is that Sandy is gateway to Mount Hood. That was the countywide. So Estacada was the gateway to the Clackamas River. So that was the county destination marketing organization, the DMO, which gets the transient lodging tax. They then identified, okay, what does this city have to offer? How can we bring that into a larger theme? This will be a little bit different because it's city. But I think the important things would be to figure out, because we don't really have any overnight. We may have Airbnb, but we don't have any hotels. How would we attract out of area visitors? So those are people that are 50 miles away. And if that's not possible, then how would we attract people from the region that want to do the activity? So it might be promoting kayaking, it might be mountain biking if we have those assets. But it usually starts with that sort of asset identification, and then whatever polling's done. They have fairly specific data and analytics depending on the firm that they can use to kind of track who comes here, because we all walk around with computers in our pockets now.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that. Staff is aware of Paul's experience in this area. That's why we actually asked him to help us put together or hold some exercises that would look at actually putting together the scope of work. So that was the intent of the meeting with EDC, was actually to tease out and hear from them what really made sense to go into the scope of work. Then he was going to help us then do that same exercise with staff and then with council. From that, we were going to put together an RFP kind of based on all of that input. And then the EDC would serve as essentially the stakeholder advisory committee throughout the process. That was the understanding of staff based on the direction from council, and is what we were attempting to begin that day. And then this recommendation came out of that. So that, again, that was our understanding of what your expectations were. So what we'd like to know tonight essentially is, how you'd like to proceed given this new feedback.
Yeah, my concerns, I mean, I wanted to know more, this is going to take a lot of work, and EDC says they can do a lot of it, but I do not want to task the city, the staff with any more work. There is budgeted money for these types of things, I understand. But the amount of work without knowing what it entails first, I'd like to know more of that. And then also, the tourism or CET through Columbia County is doing a branding exercise as well. So I kind of wanted to see where they were in their branding, not to necessarily tie it in together, but if they're doing some tourism branding, it would behoove us to look at it to see if ours can relate at all. But I wanted to know more about this. How much time is a branding exercise going to take? How much are you guys going to task the staff to go out and get surveys? Those types of things. I'd like to know more about it. You were at the meeting as well. As a liaison, did you have any insight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of just taking it all in on the same page though as the mayor and his counselor, Kim Holmes. I think so Peter brought up a good point. There's the survey stuff. There's these pieces that I think that someone like Paul and the EDC could use a lot of help with. I also think I know a lot of people say no one knows our city like we know our city because we live here. And that's true. But there's value in bringing in an outside perspective, especially someone that's an expert branding, community branding, not just business branding. But I think Paul could absolutely be a point person, but I think they're, a reasonable RFP to help guide the process, put it in a framework, get everyone to the table that should be there would make sense.
Yes, Councilor Grayson.
So a handful of years ago, when I was involved with the Parks and Rec Committee, we had people who were on the committee that knew a lot about local parks and involved in other parks and recreation throughout the area. And so that committee felt like that they could put together a parks master plan. Unfortunately, that master plan did not have accurate information in it. Things that were detailed in terms of pricing and costs of things or timelines for projects were not accurate. When you have a plan that's inaccurate, it's really difficult to plan ahead financially, to apply for grants. And so now we're at this space currently where we're putting together a parks master plan with a consulting group in a package that will allow us to financially plan or apply for grants with accurate information. I guess I'm just a little disappointed because the ask from council was just to identify a process. I read through the minutes, I've watched the meeting, and just some of the dialogue that occurred. It it just seemed to be not not from a place that wanted to move forward. Um, by putting pause, EDC is making, in my opinion, um, a point to say, you know, these things take time and they do, but all we're asking is just what's the process? What are the next steps? Um, and as we've mentioned, as the mayor has mentioned, does those steps include the EDC doing some legwork? Does it include, um, you know, a consultant down the road? But the mayor mentioned it as well that this this goal is not something that can take up a lot of staff time. And so that's why, you know, the EDC chair has come to us and multiple times said, you know, we want to be tasked with things. We want things to do. We want to, you know, get things done and you're not giving us things to do. And this is an example of us giving you something to do, but then now it's not being received. So I just,
Actually, we were in the process of, not to be contrary, but we were in the process of doing what fast. And if we were given a timeline to be a specific timeline to have some tangible results done, and maybe we would have moved more quickly. But it was kind of a shock to me at the meeting that we had spent 2 meetings or the bulk of 2 meetings on doing something and it was being taken out of our hands at that point because we were just getting our teeth into it. And but we, I am sure that everyone feels the same way that we're all serving the community. And
Branding exercises was taken away from you? Is that what you're, I mean, we're talking about branding or some
Well,
another item?
well, my initial motion was to ask for a pause of 1 or 2 months so that we could regroup because we were told that there was greater speed necessary, but we didn't know that. And that we didn't know that staff was intending um, on doing an RFP, or we would have approached it from, or at least I wasn't. And I think it was a shock to everyone who was there. I don't know that Paul would have, I don't know, maybe the purpose was misunderstood of what we were doing. But
I think we can offer some clarification.
Yeah.
Just real quick, when you spoke with Paul about doing this exercise, in your email, you had explained that was the intent of the exercise, correct?
Yeah, and what I had done with Paul is, I had a series of emails with him back and forth where I explained our impression of council's timeline, which, as Alex stated before, was to have EDC be involved and assist us with getting input and putting together a scope of work, and then going out and then EDC being the primary stakeholder of the branding project once we get to that step. And so I had explained that to Paul, and we had asked him to help facilitate because of his expertise and background, and you know, he has a lot of knowledge in this area that staff doesn't have right now, which is another reason that we feel it's most appropriate to go out and get a consultant. So this is what we asked Paul to do.
And according to our goal, it basically is identify a process for community branding. Prepare a scope of work and then request for proposals. I mean, we're still trying to identify this process. And I think what we were asking from Paul and you as the group is to help us with that process. What do you guys see is in that way. And then they'd come to us and they'd probably go to Parks and Rec, go to a couple other groups, get an idea of the scope of work before we send anything out. Does that sound different than?
So my initial motion, it was my understanding from the meeting, our last meeting, that things were going to be signed and an RFP was imminently going to be produced and that we were going to be spending money. And all of us on the committee were thinking that some amount of pause. And I initially recommended 2 months just because I thought 60 days would be sufficient enough for all of us to get on the same page in terms of how, so how do I want to say that?
Interrupt.
Yep.
I feel like there's a lot of back and forth of, if we could just be blatantly clear, I think we would probably understand each other a lot better. We don't need to dance around. I mean, state your feelings, we'll state our reality, our feelings, and hopefully we can come to an agreement because it does say here to pause the RFP process. And that doesn't mean that tomorrow we were going out for an RFP. We were just seeking information on what you felt like the process should look like.
We were told that it was too late to pause it at all, and or that it was already underway. And
We have the minutes right here. We can exactly what was.
360.
Mayor, may I?
Yeah, and Jay or Isaac, go ahead.
So
Who was
we had known whether or not this recommendation was formally made or not. We had known that we didn't have the information at that meeting based on the way it went to move forward because we just didn't actually get to the meat of what we were going for. So there was going to be no issuance of an RFP because we just simply didn't have the data we were looking for.
No, I was there, and I think Paul started answering the kind of the first question that had been asked to him, and I think it was going well, and then it kind of just got going. And did Isaac go ahead? Did you were there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I just want to remind everybody too that staff came to council a couple months ago and talked about this branding process, and it was very clear to us that we were just exploring the scope of work. And I feel that staff made it very clear to the Economic Development Committee that that's what we were doing. So personally, I'm not really sure where the confusion is. There was talk about the process generally and how staff had been sort of directed by council when you adopted the goal that gets assigned to staff, that you were expecting staff who works for you to go out and go through the steps to approach eventually over the course of a year writing an RFP. So I think that's where kind of staff is looking at this from and where we thought it was. And I think I'm the person that made the comment about, we really can't stop that. And I'll be honest, I take my direction from the city manager. And so she had at that point directed us that that's what we were doing. So that's kind of where I was at with it. Just.
Did you have something?
Yeah, just to
Councilor
help
LaFrance?
kind of move this forward, is the EDC, they can't go back to working on providing a scope of what they can and can't do until they meet next. Is that correct? They work on this, the original.
Right now, it would be too pertinent to the public interest to do this outside of a meeting. But again, this council goal has a 2-year calendar attached to it. So we're not in any rush, but we do want to get working if we're ready to do it.
You're looking at our minutes. I mean, Isaac had brought up a couple points that, what he said, have council at their goal setting, ask staff to look at branding and rebranding. It's up to the city manager to determine when directed how to do that. We thought the first part of that was going for an RFP because that's where we're going. But second, we don't really know much about branding, and we've known that EDC has been interested. So our thoughts were to collaborate with EDC, council and staff to consider where the scope might go, because that would drive the brand process and we'd have these big conversations. And then it's a goal stated for the coming fiscal year. We're just doing pre-work to get ahead of the game because we know there's a lot of parties interested. We've already adopted the goals and we had some capacity to start some pre-work. So where can we go?
So
Counselor Holmes.
it sounds to me like we're talking about an either or situation here. And I think we might be able to find a place in the middle. Either way, whether it comes from the EDC or it comes from staff, we have to figure out what's the scope of work? What are we asking to be done? And I will say from my experience on the Parks and Rec Committee, we were told as a committee that we were going to be engaged in the RFP or in the Parks Master Plan process. We did not have a chance to see the RFP. We did not have a chance to put input at all into the RFP or what it encompassed. And some of the things that like we're not seeing in the Parks Master Plan is like connectivity between parks necessarily. That's something that we would have wanted to see. So I think there may be some reservation on the part of the committee members that at this point, if it goes to RFP, it's entirely kind of being put out of their hands. What I would recommend is that if you guys want to move forward scoping the RFP, like maybe that's what staff does, or you send it back to the EDC and say, you guys, if you've got good examples of what an RFP looks like, scope it out. But we have to have an action plan. Just saying push pause is not realistic because this is too important, I think, to the 50-year plan process, to the Parks Master Plan process, if we are going to go the way of outdoor recreation. So I think there's a way that the EDC and staff should be able to work together, right, to frame out the process of the RFP. That would be my suggestion.
So I just wanted to chime in on that. That was the point of the exercise, was to get them to help us put together the scope of work for the RFP. So that's what we were attempting to do, is get their input so that the RFP was reflective of what EDC and council all wanted to be in that before we issued it. So that is what we were doing.
So I could see maybe that didn't drive to that specific outcome, but it does sound like it was a very productive meeting. And it does sound like it engaged the committee members and that there was still value in the discussion, right? So maybe offering them a little more direction on that. I'm not sure,
Just anything where a work session, if we're all together, I mean, and so we can all get onto the same page? Or like go ahead.
I think what we were talking about is hearing what EDC's scope of what they feel the work is, and then they would bring that to us and we could add to that. Or I don't think it's everybody in the same room. It's just already at their meetings and then presented at our meeting, and but that they were providing the foundation for that work. They were giving the scope for it.
Maybe then what I'm thinking is if you guys came up with what you guys thought the branding process was, what did you think you guys were going to be able to provide? What would we be needing to ask for? We would see that. We kind of look through and see how much work it was going to require of staff. Okay, maybe we can do part of that. Maybe some of it has to go out for there, and we're going to come to us too, and we're going to do the same process or same brand exercise to see what we think the scope is. And then ultimately, if a consultant is hired, I mean, we were all looking at you guys as the primary stakeholder. That somebody comes with an outside look, they're going to come to you and you're going to tell them what is Scappoose. How are we going to want to brand you? You guys were going to give them most of the information.
Right. And the primary purpose of a consultant is not to come in from outside of Scappoose and say this is what you are. Point of a consultant is really to walk us through a process because they've been through this in other communities, and it's to systematically gather feedback from the people who live and breathe Scappoose in order to get the most accurate reflection rather than them telling us what we are.
I see too, out of a consultant they talked, if we decide we're an outdoor recreation, they're going to be able to come up with funding options, how to fund. You're going to have to build some new parks. You're going to have to build this or do that. They can maybe help come up with some funding ideas for that as well. Yes.
So I apologize if I'm missing something here, but it sounds like we're clustering a lot together and we need to step back and just focus on the SOW piece first. And my understanding and listening here is that we do want the input from EDC on the SOW, and then we're going to take a look at that and see what we think, and then we can give feedback at that point. But it seems like we're getting way ahead on some things that we need to do just one step and task it out one part at a time.
Isaac, did you still have a comment?
Just really briefly on the consultant, NJ touched on something really important, which is that, we don't hire consultants to come tell the city who we are, like with the Parks Master Plan. They're not telling us what we should put in which park. They're not describing what amenities the community should see in the next 10 years. They're coordinating work, they're providing expertise, and most importantly, they're providing capacity that staff doesn't have to get this work done. A lot of the time, just generally when we go out and look for a consultant, there's kind of two things going on. One, the technical expertise, and two is capacity. And, if we had the capacity to do a lot of stuff in-house, we would do it for a lot of reasons. And, we've mentioned before, and I just kind of want to mention again generally, is that, part of the point of the consultant is a capacity issue in terms of staff time.
Okay. Moving forward, I'd like to come up with some information here that we can send to the EDC to see if they're still willing to maybe start again. If we can give you a little more direction, some more specific questions, some kind of that idea, you guys could come back answering the questions. And that might say, we think this part of it we can do, but I do think Paul's valuable information. He'll know kind of the process that needs to be done and what it's going to take. And so we do want to hear that. I don't think the RFP is not imminent. It's not on any calendar because we want to see first what we want before we go out.
So I also have a request is if there is something for us all to be thinking about, not saying that anyone did anything wrong, but it would be better for me. It would help me to include it in an email. Paul has asked his expertise, would he please come up with X, Y, and Z? If Paul starts to get off in the weeds doing something related, but not really focusing on what's going to answer the questions for you more efficiently. There's 4 or 5 others of us sitting up there and we can say, okay, but that's not related to what we're supposed to be doing. But I didn't know.
Right. Well, I think we too need to get with Christine and really let her understand what we're wanting out of that. Angie.
If I may make a suggestion, I think that the move forward here is just about providing everyone more information from the get-go. I think that could address a lot of the issues that are bringing us here tonight. And so what I would suggest is that we, at the upcoming May meeting for EDC, that staff just provide, a more clear, more information on what the entire process is going to look like and entail, and what our expectations are for EDC. And again, when we send out the agenda, give them a week to think about these kinds of things, but really just try what we were going to do in April, take 2.
And then hopefully they'll call and ask questions and get a really good understanding of what we're wanting from them at that meeting. Yes.
Does the chair of that committee not create the agenda with you?
No, yeah, we have a call every month to create the agenda.
So the chair is aware of the goal of those items on the agenda.
Mm.
Thank you.
I have another question.
Sorry, he has it.
Yes, David.
She would not be aware of emails that were sent directly to Paul, and
She was in this case.
Would it help if we scope these things out smaller into sections with some of, I'm thinking of more of our committees. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been through some of these branding exercises because I was the chair of Clackamas County's Tourism Board when we did a lot of our branding. And generally you start with getting data and analytics and what's called a SWOT analysis, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's where your visitors coming from, it's where they staying, it's looking, and I don't think we're at a point where we're ready for a lodging study, but as the demographics of the community shift and as people have whether it's parents or out of area visitors needing a place to stay, then that's what drives a hotel getting built. But it starts with predicate information, a lot of which is counterintuitive. So you really don't, for instance, we were going to go out to bring out of area visitors and what market we're going to target. And what the data and analytics showed was, and this is years ago, was Austin, Texas. We were getting a lot of visitors there without doing any advertising, particularly during July and August because it's so hot. And so we did what would be called like a guerrilla branding campaign, using like pedicabs that were wrapped and had covered wagon tops. And we ended up with a direct flight from Austin daily. So, and we would have never come up with that location. So I think what I've learned time and time again is that some of the data you can guess, but a lot of it, that's why you bring in the outside experts. And then they work with the community, whether it's the EDC or other boards, in order to craft the narrative that would cause people to come here. And hopefully they would collaborate with St. Helens or other people with lodging partners in order to come up with that. But and maybe Paul's experience has been different from my experience, but my experience is that the data always comes first, and then the data leads to that scope. And then once you know like what your return on investment could be, at that point you can start making decisions related to programming of dollars. I've never seen it done with like the committee coming up with the branding absent the data. And that doesn't mean it couldn't be done. It seems like that would create missed opportunities.
So that's kind of my point. Are we throwing too many things at some of these committees at one time and not giving them a specific pinpoint thing to focus on? Not everybody knows how to approach a project to be able to get it done, what order to dissect it in and analyze it and come up with different points to move forward. So I guess without having a prolonged discussion about it, it's maybe just a reflection point for us to think about how we task some of these committees with some of the things that we need from them. Thank you.
Okay, so are we okay leaving it where we are? And then coming back to the EDC at the next meeting and kind of what NJ had said? I mean, I see it says approval, but I don't think we're really wanting to slow down anything. We'll just define it better and give you an idea better of time frame and what the scope we're looking for and go from there. But okay.
Can I ask a rhetorical question? Is it important that we brand Scappoose? We have to be something. Do we?
I mean, I think that it helps that people in and out of the area are aware of the city. I mean, it can help attract businesses. It can help attract out of area visitors. Again, the gorge is beyond capacity right now, and the Mount Hood National Forest through Sandy, all those mountain biking trails are at or above capacity. So to the extent that, and I worked with Travel Oregon a lot over the years, there are grants, there are some large grants you can get, but you have to be able to give them it's like getting state grants. They have to have a reason to invest. And maybe it's mountain biking trails, and maybe you can partner with the Forest Service. I don't know what opportunities might be out there. These were all things that I did when I was serving in that role. Or rather we did, our TDC did, but it's if you want to do more outreach and you want to make people aware of the opportunities that could exist here, you want to build them out. Those are all reasons to brand. And if you don't, then there aren't any. I mean, it's again, we're not at a point where we could get we don't have the data that we would need to truly get a lodging study because there's no real comp. The Northwest Portland is not, the industrial area is not a comp for us. St. Helens is not a comp for us because we're close enough to Portland that we're on an island. So if we actually want to get a lodging partner in, and let me just say, I've taken off my city attorney hat now. I've got my tourism hat on.
For PIO.
Yeah. So if if we were, if, in my opinion, not legal opinion, if we were want to get a lodging facility, what we would need to do is look at our transient lodging tax rate. We would need to look at the demographics, which we have some idea of. And then we would probably need to rebate that tax to the builder. So they would build the facility in addition to what they were getting paid. Instead of giving us the transient lodging tax, it would be getting rebated to them so they could service their bonds. That's the sort of thing that a community that doesn't have a lodging facility needs to do in order to get the first lodging facility. And then once you have the first one, if you have a room rate of X and you have like 80%, this is a rule for the industry. If you're above 80%, you build more. If you're below 80%, you don't. And you hope you don't have a situation like Portland where they were like at 83%. Then they built the convention center hotel and the Ritz-Carlton and all these facilities, and now they're at like 34%. So that's not ideal. But in a city like this, the first lodging facility you would probably need to subsidize using your transient lodging tax, and then it's all about how many overnight stays. It's all heads and beds.
And maybe through this scope, this work, we'll find out if we do or don't. We're definitely not like a Mount Angel or like I said, Leavenworth, but we'll find out. And it is coming on the heels of looking at some hotels coming out. I'm sure they're liking to see us promote, but also we've talked about OMEC too in the future. I mean, that's something too that we can look at marketing a little bit more as well as outdoor, and we're trying to figure out how to do that. Okay.
So do you feel you have enough direction? So RFP is not imminent or on a timeline, right? There's still the opportunity for EDC to weigh in on what the scope of work is going to be, but that's what we likely need in the next meeting, correct?
Yeah, you guys moved up your meeting to May 11th, and it's probably has a bunch of already stuff on the agenda.
What would you like to see as results from the next meeting and the meeting after that? And we will
Scope of work. And I'll look that up to see what that means, but scope of work.
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul being realistic, what he can and can't do and what the EDC can take on and,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then Tyler said SOW.
Yeah. Took me a while to figure out that. You know. EDC, RFP. Only my 4th month. Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you for being here
Thank
and
you.
and explaining that, yeah.
Thank you, David.
So SOW. I'm a firm believer that the scope of work, the task list, the criteria, specifications are, the foundation of a project really. But I know you know this.
He gets it.
And,
So,
okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Okay. On to number 7, city manager evaluation process. Legal counsel Ashley Driscoll online. Take it away.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Can you hear
there
me?
we go. Better.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there a reason why I can't turn my camera on? No? Okay. Well, I'll just go ahead and get started. Ashley Driscoll, City Attorney's Office. I'm here tonight to talk about the city manager evaluation. Because we have a couple of new counselors, I am going to take it from the top, why we do the evaluation, and then go through the process and what I'm looking for tonight. So we do the process to facilitate communication between the city council and your employee, who is fee manager Alex Rains. It is part of what the council negotiated into Alex's contract 2 years ago. So under Alex's contract, it says the parties meet every June and decide on the format and the content of the evaluation. At the end of the evaluation, the council can discuss a merit increase if warranted. This is actually Alex's third evaluation because she was interim city manager for a full year. And so we did a evaluation of her role as the interim city manager, which was supposed to be right off the bat, but got a little delayed. And then we did her other evaluation, her other annual evaluation, and this will be the third. So the process that we've used the last 2 times, in my opinion, has worked pretty well. And I think last time we got some pretty good feedback. We made some tweaks after the first time. So I'm going to present tonight the process we used last time. If there are any changes to the process or the criteria, we can discuss those tonight. I already have a proposed change to the timeline after talking to Alex. So I'll tell you about that. So the process that we have used in the past is that we have a first meeting, which is tonight, and the council reviews all the important documents. So you review the criteria that you would be using for evaluating. Alex, you review the timeline. And then you make a decision about whether you agree that this is the appropriate criteria and this is the appropriate process. 2 additional documents that you have in here. One is the self-evaluation for the city manager. That's the one that Alex fills out regarding her last year. How we typically like it is that Alex gets, at least a week or so to fill out that evaluation. She can give it some thought. In years past, she's, produced a pretty nice document reviewing the year. That comes to all of the city council. I think in years past, she has emailed it directly to councilors. Councilors then take that information from the city manager's self-evaluation and also the criteria that we are going to adopt tonight. And each councilor fills out the evaluation form regarding, how they have perceived Alex has performed under each one of those criteria. Then you email that to me. So I receive all 5 or 7 of the evaluations. Oh.
There we go. Turn off the other one. There we go.
Okay. So do you have me? Can you hear me okay?
Not very loud, but
Not
we
very loud.
How about now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, but we're trying to mute you on a different part because it's echoing back and forth.
okay. Yeah.
How about now? Here's the echo.
We're almost there.
Try that. Hey, Ashley, can you try to unmute again?
Not the video one.
There you go.
There. Okay, try that.
No.
I'm going to try from my phone.
Go ahead.
Unmute your video now. It might work.
Doesn't have a good speaker. You're muted.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay. Very sorry about that. At what point did I drop off?
You get all.
We get all 5, 7.
Yeah, you receive all their
You dictated them. You got
all
it.
of their individual feedback goes back to you. I think is where you dropped off.
Okay. So all of the individual feedback would then come back to me, and then I compile everything into one document. So when I compile it into one document, that goes back to council, and then we have our second meeting. So the second meeting is a meeting in an executive session, and the city council is able to take a look at all of the scores and all of the criteria in the context of the larger evaluation. One of the things that we have really strived for in the past, and I think makes a lot of sense and provides a good evaluation, is as consistent of a voice as possible when you have 7 supervisors. So that has worked well. That has been a little bit of a longer executive session in order to, come to some sort of consensus from the council. One of the things Caboose has done in the past, and I would recommend us doing in the future or going forward, is that no comments are removed over the commenter's objection. So if you, after, going through the process, believe that even though others object, your comment is still valid, then generally speaking, it stays in. And again, going on 3 rounds of this, I think that process has actually worked pretty well. We've been able to come to consensus on most items. So then once we've reached a consensus on the evaluation, we provide it to Alex and then have a final executive session where the council is able to provide feedback directly to Alex. Alex has reviewed the evaluation. She can ask any questions or clarifications. So that's the end of the official evaluation process. Then after that point, the council can go out into regular session, and in regular session, the council can decide on any merit increase. One of the regulations that we do look out for is that there cannot be a discussion of salary in executive session. So any questions or comments from the council on the process?
I have one quick one, Ashley, Joe here. Maybe I misheard, but on the following weeks, the second part, she fills out a self-evaluation, turns it into city, and then we see that, and then we can fill out our evaluation, seeing her evaluation at the same time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Okay. So if there are
What
no
was the change? Yeah, the change you were talking about.
So in going over the timeline with Alex, I think that the second meeting is going to be pretty tight for everybody's calendars. So instead of having the second meeting in May, that we move the second meeting to June 1st. I'm sorry, 5th. So Alex, if we approve the criteria in the self-evaluation tonight, Alex has, a week or so at least to fill out the evaluation. She can send it to you guys. I will email a Word version of the evaluation criteria for you all to fill out. And it just gives a little bit more time for everybody to go through that process. And then, of course, to get it back to me to compile into one document for that second meeting. So the amendment would be, obviously tonight is the first meeting. The second meeting would be June 5th. And then the third meeting where we meet with Alex and then discuss a potential merit increase in open session, that would be July 17th.
I have a question.
Councilor Holmes?
So at the League of Oregon Cities meeting, there were a number of other city managers there. And I asked a couple just kind of what does your review process look like? And some of them said that like not every year, but in maybe every 3 to 5 years, they do a 360 review where they will have like city employees provide feedback, community members provide feedback, and other key external stakeholders. Is that part of this schedule long term, or is that something that has not been discussed?
That has not been discussed. Definitely some cities do a 360 either annually or on, as you said, a cyclical basis. So we can definitely do that. And then it's just the scope of that. Is that external partners? Is that just department heads? Is that, all employees? So for that, for a 360, what entities usually do is bring in like an outside person to assist with that, or do something pretty, pretty simple, like asking department heads to provide feedback directly to the city attorney, and then I provide that to you in executive session.
Councilor LaFrance?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. And it's not, this isn't specific to Alex. Not that I don't, I think it would be very helpful to have staff input in our evaluation. They work with the city manager every day. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's what I was going to ask about. Whether it's this one, I mean, I don't know that we need to redo this year, maybe, but in the future.
Yeah, especially with 3 new ones here. I mean, the information that I'm going on is just 4 months of information. Do I see old evaluations to see if things have been addressed or changed? I mean, is that something that's common or typical? Or not really a good idea?
Well, it's not common, but because there have been a substantial changeover in the council, that is something that we could do in executive session is, provide some time to review past evaluations to see the progress. For this evaluation, we could definitely take a look. I would want to make sure that the questions to department heads are what the council would want. So I'd want to bring back sample questions or a sample evaluation for department heads, and then we can implement that process now, or we could implement that process for next time around.
I think having the input of department heads would be helpful this time around, and then we can look at like if, putting it on a longer term cycle, having a broader 360 with more community input would make sense. I don't think we need to do a drastic change this year, but I think the department heads would be helpful.
Yeah, I'd support that.
Do they get different questions than we do? Do we have to go through and identify those questions?
Take a closer look with that eye for it.
Ashley, this is Tyler. Are there other cities that you work with that do that? And could we potentially review their process and what they use?
Yeah, I can think of 3 right now that do that process where they collect information from department heads. And what I'm trying to remember right now is if they use the same criteria that the council uses or if they have their own criteria. And I believe the answer is that they use the same criteria that the council uses, although clearly some of it is not as applicable to their roles.
Yeah.
Not the same questions though, right? Because I don't see the questions. I see the questions being different that council evaluates on the evaluation criteria that we would evaluate on, I would think would be much different than staff that interfaces with city manager on a daily basis.
Look,
Or does this change the May 2 through 10 then? Is that extended out a little bit since we're pushing the second meeting out? Will we get another week? Will Alex get another week?
So first of all, I am looking through the questions that you specifically use, and you're right that, I think that you would want to ask different questions of department heads. So if that is the direction that the council wants to go, I think that would be bringing it back to I would gather samples that my other cities use. I would bring them back at another city council meeting for your consideration, and the process would be somewhat delayed. So that would be for your next council meeting, probably. Is that May 10th? Is that the next one?
15.
The 15th. So that would be at the May 15th. And then, yeah, like we would need to send, the same time that Alex is doing her self-evaluation, we would send an email out to department heads and obviously have to communicate to them, what the process is and what's going on and so forth, because it's new for the city of Scappoose, and then give them time to fill it out and bring you back those results.
Ashley, I have another question. So those are not anonymous though, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking through how those would go and just how they need to be. I don't think fair is the right word, but
here's how we do it with some other cities that we use. And they are also smaller cities. We're not talking like we have 15 department heads that are filing evaluations, that they come into our office and that they're then, put together in one document, very similar to what we have done in the past with the city council feedback. So, oftentimes it is easier to identify, who's providing what feedback just from the type of feedback they're providing, but their names are not included in these
scores are combined.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Um, just so that we cannot get too far off on our timeline, because this is slated in her contract on when we do these evaluations. You're saying next time you would bring sample questions for us, or we would just be creating them together in that meeting?
I would bring samples.
So is it a possibility that you could email those questions ahead of time and that people could reply just to you to give feedback if a counselor cannot be present during that meeting? Can they give feedback to you via email?
Because the council is adopting the criteria that they would be using by a vote, that should be done at a council meeting. So I think, I can send them out ahead of time for your review, but I think the actual vote on what types of questions we use, and again, who we're sending them to, I'm assuming we're just talking department heads. I think that should be at your May 15th meeting.
Sure. Okay, so Tyler's
to-
not going to be present at that meeting. Can he email you directly any thoughts he has, or and you bring those to the meeting, or should he just kind of not have a voice in the?
He can definitely have a voice. I have to look at your guys' charter and council rules, but I'm pretty sure he can't participate in the actual vote. But definitely can send along his input.
Great, thank you.
So if we
I
wanted
think we could. Sorry, I would, I think what Council President Greisen is suggesting, hopefully I'm getting this right, is that we're able to look at the questions ahead of time, be prepared to discuss them, and then come to a final conclusion on which ones want to be used through a vote at the meeting, right? Okay, so I can certainly send somebody, Ashley, if it's helpful, what I think the questions are that should be asked, but if I'm not going to be here, then I would, of course, respect the consensus of the vote of council on the 15th.
So if I understand that correctly, yes, I can send out the samples that we have, later this week, and then you can provide me your input and I can bring that to the council meeting on the 15th. And if we wanted to keep everything on, the same time schedule or the same timeline, we could adopt the city council criteria and the city manager criteria tonight and the timeline. And then the only thing that we would be adding is a meeting on the 15th to adopt the department head criteria. Could send that out, immediately after we get it, and then hopefully get that information back to you guys by our June 15th meeting. I'm sorry, our June 5th meeting. And also, I just want to make sure that because Alex is a partner in the evaluation, that she's able to provide her comments as well.
So on your paper here, our first meeting, we can still vote and pass that. Even though we're changing we're not changing the criteria really.
You're changing.
We're just adding a step with. I'm trying to think if that will help me, and I want to be very fair, especially with just 4 months of information, that if I'm missing, I want to make sure I get all the information possible. I think that would help.
Can we ask Alex, do you feel like this is a equitable way to do it? Process?
I mean, I don't necessarily have an issue with you reaching out to the department heads. And I have a hard time not feeling like suggesting a 360 is a bit of a punishment, to be honest, that usually you do that with someone when they're doing something inherently wrong or there's complaints or there's a problem. So I guess I do have a little bit of pause about why that's being suggested. Like I said, I think I understand why the feedback from department heads would feel helpful. But yeah, to be frank, the suggestion of a 360 does feel like a bit of almost like a punishment.
I would personally like to get through this one first myself and see how it goes, see what I learned from it. And then look at changes down the road if needed.
Mayor, may I? So this could just be an issue of different people's interpretation of what a 360 is. So on that topic, because I guess I didn't put that much thought into it, but actually when, I'm guessing that you have some clients that do 360s. How are those generally used? Are they used when there's necessarily an issue, or are they just used more to give a more complete understanding of an evaluation or something like that? I'm generally asking because I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, I think both parties have some validity. So definitely when an issue arises, one of the things that we do is often suggest a 360. So that term does carry some of that weight that, there's a problem and this council needs to understand what it is. That being said, again, like, I would say a large, not a small percentage of my clients do the department head input on a regular basis, each evaluation cycle. And, they do that for the reason that I think some of you expressed is that, you guys see Alex at these meetings and you don't necessarily have some of the input in terms of communication with staff because of the structure of the city council. You guys just evaluate Alex. Your Alex and, the city attorney are really, and the municipal judge are the only people that report directly to you. So it's a way to get more information. The process here with the city of Scappoose is that prior to Alex, you really didn't do a evaluation process at all. My understanding is that you guys, had maybe one meeting and that was it. And, so that this has been more of a process. Okay, can we move up from one meeting to have a more robust process? And then that is more of a next step to have department heads. So I see why Alex feels that way, but it also is just a progression to having a more professional review.
Yeah, and I think just being clear on what it is and why ahead of time might, potentially alleviate that. But I can see both sides now. Thank you.
And I would just like to clarify, I did not suggest a thorough 360 this year. I simply stated that there are cities that do employ that on a 3-year, 5-year cycle. And it would be helpful to have the insight from the department heads, but I'm not trying to suggest that there is an issue that requires a 360 this year.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I
President.
do want to echo what Ashley said and why that does create some feelings in this space is that Alex's predecessor did not have really much of a evaluation process at all. And having been a part of it for a handful of years, it wasn't meaningful, and nothing really ever changed year to year in terms of the performance based on the evaluation. The evaluation was not, it didn't really do much. And then when Alex comes along, things shift, right? And we think, oh, well, we should evaluate differently or in a different way, or counselors change. And I think that that can really sit personally with like, but you never really did much before me. So what's up with all the new criteria and this whole big process, to not take it personally, right? Like, well, it must be about me. Um, I personally am very pleased that we've come to this point because I can trust that even when Alex has moved on to a much bigger city doing much bigger things than us, the next city manager that comes here is going to be looked under the same lens. And I think the shift just so happened to happen between the previous city manager and her. But I think that we're now in a track where hopefully future councils will continue to make this the robust process that it is, because the city manager is a really important role in our city. And my wheels are already turning about emailing school board members because I don't really know what the process looks like for the superintendent, but it should definitely be at least this robust. And that's just because I think boards and committees, councils like us, just want to show that the person we appointed is the best that we can have and is doing the best that we need for our town. And so anyways, I think maybe that's why a lot of this, when I hear the word 360, I mean, that's only happened in the police department. So that's got to be like not a great thing, right? And that's nothing to say about our current chief, but I I can see how in the future it could be a positive, but at this moment in time, that doesn't give that same meaning.
We could certainly call it something different.
I mean, most of the time, the process I'm talking about is just department head input.
Before we then may have a motion, is there a change then with the May 2 through 10 options?
Yeah, I have emailed Susan about it as well. So if you are going to go forward with the process as laid out, I would the motion just say the amended timeline. And the motion is provided in the memo.
Okay, so we're looking right now, still first meetings today. We're voting on the council reviews, we're going to vote on the evaluation criteria and process timeline, which we've changed the May 15th to June 5th for the second meeting.
And the third meeting to July 17th.
And the third meeting is July 17th. We vote on any amendment to the criteria.
Mayor, may I back up for a minute? On
Yes.
the second meeting, did I hear you say June 5th? So May 15th to June 5th?
Yes.
Okay.
May
Yeah.
15th is to go over the questions for adding a meeting in there to review department head questions. We still are track for.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah.
I maybe lost a little bit. So are we going to move forward with department head input on this evaluation cycle? Are we going to move it or consider it for the next evaluation cycle?
I'm hearing this cycle if we have that time.
Okay. Then I'm sorry, I was
Yeah.
misunderstanding the direction. So then I would say I move to approve the city council evaluation criteria, the city manager and the city manager self evaluation criteria. And we'll vote on that tonight. And I'll start the process and then I'll bring back next meeting on May 15th, the revised process. So we're approving the criteria for the council and for the city manager, and we're waiting on the full process.
Just to help me then, when I start filling mine out, are we looking for mine back by May 10th on this date, or still with that, or do I have a little more time?
I'll email, when I email
Okay.
everything out, I'll put some more internal deadlines, like I'll talk to Alex about when she needs to get hers in, and then once I get hers in, we'll know when your guys's are due by. So you're waiting to fill out yours until you receive Alex's self-evaluation. And then the department head input, I will bring with me on June 5th, or if I get it compiled earlier, I'll send it earlier.
Okay. Well, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the city council evaluation criteria, the city manager self-evaluation criteria, and the recommended process timeline.
Make that motion?
Motion by Counselor Holmes. Second.
Second.
Second by Counselor Miller. Any discussion? All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Mr. Mayor.
Opposed? No.
Sorry, cut you off. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is it okay? Opposed? Motion carries.
Just for clarification again, for the record, can you please go over the
Yes.
dates one more time?
Make sure I got this right. We're doing tonight, May 1. We voted on the criteria, our evaluation criteria, Alex's self-evaluation criteria, and the amended dates of June 5th will be our second meeting. July 11th or July 17th will be our third meeting. And you will email, and then in May 15th, we will have, we will come back to vote on the questions for the department heads. That sound right? Ashley?
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else on that? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Information. Shoot, I got 24 minutes. Hurry up. Hey, it starts a budget committee meeting on Wednesday, May 10th, 5:30. EDC meeting at noon on Thursday, May 11th. And a second budget committee meeting at 5:30 if needed. Saturday, May 13th, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. a farmer's market. Monday, May 15th, council work session at 6 PM, followed by council meeting at 7 PM. Tuesday, May 16th, budget committee at 5:30 if needed. May 18th, park and rec at 6 PM. Saturday, May 20th, farmers market at 9 AM to 2 PM. Thursday, May 25th, planning commission at 7 PM. Another farmers market on May 27th at 9 AM. Monday, May 29th, city office is closed. And I think Tuesday, May 30th, a 50-year SAC meeting at 6 PM. And that's all I have for the calendar. Any updates, city manager Rains?
Just that I had attended Earth Day. It seemed like a great event, and I just wanted to thank the police department for cooking food. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Police Chief Lugal.
First, I want to apologize for being late. I was on a call. We have 59 cases to date. Officer Berglund is currently in FTEP, and we have a sergeant and an officer both in backgrounds. So slowly but surely. As you all got the CIS report, I got a preliminary copy, and I just didn't have time because I've been taking calls the last few weeks while Chris was away at the PCOD training. 17 out of 20 have already been completed or in the process. So like the training, those were all sent out to the officers to get done. Eye wash, fire extinguishers were purchased. Chris was assigned to the safety committee. So we tackled these pretty much within a couple of days. There may be one or two that may not work, but I will give you a fuller report next month after they're all completed. Just so you have time to digest it, but we tackled it as soon as we got it. So taking it all very seriously. The code enforcement, Chris and I have been handling it. As you saw, we had some parking complaints. Vehicles were tagged for removal. One camper, the owner was advised to move. That I'll follow up tomorrow. As Alex said, Earth Day was well attended. It was a pretty fun event. We cooked a lot of food. And we will be planning another Coffee with a Cop event coming soon. One of the topics I want to talk to you about is a while ago I mentioned about getting a patrol dog. With the current staffing, it's just not feasible. There's a lot to be taken into consideration, the training, handler, there's union negotiations, all that stuff. So when I was away at training a couple of weeks ago, I really got into the idea of a support dog versus a patrol dog because a support dog will be everyone's dog. So we're not going to assign it to one person. Everyone in City Hall, will have it. And the nice thing about that is we could bring it to all our events. We could bring it to the schools. They're very, very open to petting, very well trained, behaved. If we have a major call, we could take the dog out, should there be a death. So I'm investigating that, and I will have more information on that. But we're going to try to fundraise for that versus putting it in the budget. Just because me and Alex been talking about it, I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's kind of the direction we're leaning right now. Because I think it'll work much better, due to our current needs and everything like that. And I think, having a community dog versus a patrol dog will be a big hit with everyone.
Start. Great. Thank you.
Pretty much all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Friends.
Yeah, Chief, I really like that idea of a community kind of based support dog. It was great to see the Chief, Lieutenant, and Alex out at Earth Day. It was fun picking up trash at Chapman Landing with my daughter, and I joined the mayor. I missed Kim's talk, but I'm sure it went well. And then I just want to thank our city manager, Alex, for all the work that she has done. Just coming from my background as a college professor, twice a year I get evaluated by 200 students below me and a dean and a provost above me. So I think there's value there, and I hope you don't feel like we're trying. There's an agenda there. I think there's growth, and I think it's just important to kind of see different perspectives. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Holmes.
Yeah, I mentioned the League of Oregon Cities Conference a couple times. It was a great event, learned a lot. It was great to just connect with other councilors, mayors, city managers. There is another small cities meeting this Friday up in Rainier, which I'll be attending. So looking forward to that.
Great. Councilor Miller.
I
Actually, just had, well, first a comment and then a question. I was hoping Dave was still going to be here. So I noticed the electric car charging stations out there. Are those already active now?
I'm not sure if they're active or not quite yet.
I noticed that there's poles to affix signs to. I'm wondering what those signs are going to say, because I'm wondering if we're going to have limits on how long a car can actually be parked there. And then some of the other commentary that I have seen specifically on social media is just the lack of parking that we already have in the area. And so I would just ask that we think about maybe not designating every single one of those as electric car charging only. I know that kind of sounds a little bit weird, but maybe we just keep an eye on it and reserve those as needed. So maybe start out with 2 or 3 and then dedicate them as electric car charging stations only, or for electric vehicles only rather, as the need actually arises. And that's just trying to balance the parking situation that we have on the street. And I'm not saying that I don't know that that's the right thing to do. I'm just saying that we should evaluate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Also President Kreisen.
Waiting for a question or something. You had 2 things, but you got them all.
Well, my question was what the signs.
Oh, got it.
I do know a little bit. I mean, they were gonna talk more about the signs and who donated them, stuff like that, but that where the money came from and
Recognition.
eventually it could be some local businesses, like while you're here, go visit our library, go over here, some information about stuff in the area.
The poles that you see like stop signs affixed to. So I'm wondering if maybe there was already gonna be some signage about time limits or something like that.
Okay. Oh, Council President Kreisen.
I was pleased to hear and see so many great people out at Earth Day. We had already had a trip planned to the coast. We were up early clamming. I'm glad that all of you were able to attend. In regards to code enforcement or responsiveness from the police department, I know some people are using the tip line. I know that I can email if there's something I'm noticing, and there's always a really quick response. So thank you. I know that you're short staffed, but you're still doing all the work. And I am absolutely obsessed with a community dog, and I would love to have that. And I might be here at City Hall a lot more than I already am. And I'm just thinking how great that would be for a lot of kids in the schools, because canine dogs, they're working and they can't be touched and they can't be, yeah. So I think that's way better thought. The police department is also generously donating experience to the Grant Watts auction. The fire department did as well. So we're happy to offer our community an opportunity to bid on hanging out with some local heroes, or riding in an engine to school, or having pizza here at the police station. So thank you for doing that. There is a big election coming up right now. I'm sure the high school auditorium is still packed listening to school board forum, but ballots came out. Vote how you'd like, but please just do it. Just vote. Put it in. I'll turn it in for you. Just leave it on your porch.
Thank you. Again, yeah, Earth Day was great. It was fun down at Chapman Landing and looking out at the park and all the opportunities, potential that could be there. Worked out, cleaned up with some Cub Scouts, and it was great to see all the people and the chief flipping burgers and handing out pizza. It was a great event. It kind of was nice weather finally, so we really appreciated that. Grant Watt auction is May 13th coming up. So that is another big one. I know my wife was talking about her donations as well. So I know we've got a lot of people donating there.
But you have to buy a ticket. It's not free like it normally is.
That's well worth it. Chamber of Commerce night, May 5th. There's Ward Banquet this Friday night. I would encourage anybody that can to please message Susan about going. If you know someone that might benefit from that, I'd like to try to send somebody from our city if possible. Career Day at PCC last Thursday was great to see all the businesses there and all the kids come through and read some resumes. There are a lot of bright kids there, a lot of kids that really have it together at that stage, much more than I did. Drainage district meeting last week was good to meet with them and see the issue is how we work with them. Kim and I, again, at the LOC Spring Conference in Seaside, it was good to meet with some other mayors, city managers, see what other cities are doing and learn from them as well. Thanks again, really, to Alex. I've been asking her a lot of questions, getting back to me right away, and keep pushing on that shared use agreement. And now we have a meeting set up, a work session with them in a month or two. So really appreciate that. And just got a call about a couple hours ago, meeting with the Cub Scouts on May 8th and talk to them at their next meeting. So I'm looking forward to that. That's all I have for tonight. I appreciate you very much. And there's probably 15 to 30 minutes left at the high school if you do want to go over and meet the candidates for school board. That's where I'm heading. Appreciate it.